we are loading right now. So we'll get started very, very soon, and I'll start sharing my screen where I'll go through more of the agenda for this event. And feel free to share your favorite games in the chat. Get to know each other through your favorite games. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming. We're super excited to have Matt again with us for Getting Interactive, Designing Games with Adobe XD. I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies back in April 2020 and saw it kind of grown to this much, to 22,000 members, how we are today. And full-time, I'm a product designer at Electronic Arts. And so Design Buddies, if you don't know what Design Buddies is, we're a large community on Discord. We're also active on many social media platforms, and we provide a lot of free resources like this, fun giveaways, and just resources to help you elevate your design career. And you can hop into our community if you want to continue conversation. But we're super excited to have Matt here with us today. So we'll first get started with Matt's workshop, and after that, we'll be doing 2 giveaways. So after Matt's workshop, we'll be doing a giveaway. We're doing a group photo. So at 6 o'clock, we'll be doing a group photo, and then we'll be doing a group Instagram wave for Instagram story. You'll see that later. And then we're doing our first giveaway, and that's going to be a surprise question. And then we'll have a Q&A session. So during this duration event, you can submit your questions via Slido. This is so we just make sure we don't miss any of our questions, and that comes in the Zoom chat, because sometimes y'all are super amazing, love to engage in the chat. So we just want to make sure we capture all your questions in one place. And after that, we'll be doing a giveaway, our second and third giveaway at the very end around 6:28 p.m. Pacific time, so 2 minutes before the event ends. And then after this event, we have 6 more giveaways, so 9 total. So you can get 3 by posting your stuff on socials and tagging Adobe XD and Design Buddies. More on that, on the details I'll be sending out afterwards, and as well as posting your games on Discord. So there's so many ways you can get free 1 year of Adobe XD Creative Cloud, and we're here to share that with you today. And also during this event, please plug your LinkedIns in the networking sheet. Please don't plug in them in the chat because it can be kind of distracting. So we have a networking sheet shared in the chat where you can connect all with your fellow buddies and Matt as well. And thank you so much for listening to my spiel. With that, I'll leave the floor to Matt.
Perfect. Thank you, Grace. 1 second. I'm opening apps I shouldn't be. Okay. We're ready to rock. So hello again, everyone. I'm Matt Rae to be precise. And I'm a designer advocate at XD instructor. And I basically do events like this, work with design teams around the world, teaching best practices, how to use XD. And today, so feel free to connect with me here. I'm also all loaded up in the networking sheet that you'll see in the chat. Today, we're going to be designing a card matching game in XD. Now, I know we're talking about video games in the chat, and we're going to talk about that. But for our examples, we're going to use a really simple card matching game to show you what you can do in XD. And by the end, you'll be able to actually create a playable link where you can actually play this game just from a share link. So that's what we're going to get into. For those of you who are new to XD, haven't seen any of the past sessions, again, check out the recordings. I feel like I'm a YouTube streamer. Subscribe, hit the like button. Check out the recordings below in the chat where we talk about using XD for designing a personal brand. But XD is really a design collaboration UX design tool or platform, should I say, backed by Adobe, right? So it connects in with all of your other Adobe tools that you're used to using, like Photoshop and Illustrator, but really gives you a really efficient way to design and prototype experiences, whether it's for web, mobile, voice, or games. And so we're going to talk a little bit just to set you up about some of the features that XD supports for game design. But if you are looking to learn more, we only have an hour and a half or so, so not much time to cover everything that could be covered. Check out adobe.com/learnxd for a lot more tutorials. You'll see some stuff here from Howard Pinsky, who goes through some really cool animation and design stuff, like scrollable social cards. You can also check out his daily creative challenges and masterclass on Behance. So with that, we're going to dive right in. And if you downloaded the starter file, you're going to see something like this, minus my presentation. So today we're actually working from the same starter file. So if there's something missing, well, then you're probably in the wrong file. Everything below this presentation should be in there, and you'll actually notice I hid the finished product at the bottom, just in case you get lost. The whole thing's there that you can kind of break down and reverse engineer. But to start, I want to start by talking about some of the basics if you are new to XD. So again, XD is really designed to give you an efficient environment for designing and prototyping and testing experiences, depending or independent of whatever platform you're doing it for. So here up at the top, quick kind of lay of the land, we have design, prototype, and share modes. This simply changes what you're going to see in your property inspectors. You're going to be able to get to your assets. This is just the document assets for the document. And so you should see all of this. If you click on this little libraries icon down here, it'll open into your document assets, and you'll be able to access all of this Design Buddies branded content. And then down below that, you have your layers panel. This is where you can manipulate all the layers, rearrange, hide, lock, all your layers controls, and then plugins, which we're not going to get to today, but if you're a plugin fan like I am, you can explore them there. So with that, one of the benefits to XD is being able to go from design to prototype all in the same environment and do some really rich prototyping without that much work. So today, even though we're kind of talking broadly about games, we're going to use a simple card match game to show you some of the power. And to just get started, I'm going to walk through some simple interactions using this presentation. And I'm going to zoom right in on it. So here, with the design laid out, we can easily just flip over to prototype mode. You can see a couple things change in terms of my options. And then I get the lovely blue lines that we're familiar with in prototyping. And on the right, this is my property inspector for the interaction. Here I have a few different options or triggers that I can use to initiate an action or interaction. So here I just have a simple tap, but I have different options. Like I can do a drag, I can use time delays, I can use, I don't know how to hide these notifications, keys and gamepad, and voice. And so today we're going to talk about tap, time, and keys and gamepad, but it's really easy to layer on things like voice if you want to build in some other elements into a game design. And you can stack all of these interactions so that one action can be triggered by any of these, which is really cool and very powerful, especially if you're trying to do some sort of multimodal experience. And then from there, we have our basic transitions. You can create overlays, you can go back, and then we have audio and speech playback, which is also really cool, but we might need to dive into that in another session. We're really going to use Auto-Animate today to create some cool motion between artboards and component states. So Auto-Animate and these triggers are going to be our best friend today. But to show you what we can do, I'm going to convert this here over to a keys and gamepad. And what this is going to allow me to do is either use a key from, oh, the background might make this tough. A key from my keyboard. I'm just going to switch my virtual background off so that you can see. All right. So I can use a keyboard, or I can use a game controller and actually map these keys to the interactions in XD. And how I'm doing that is I've simply connected it via Bluetooth to my computer. And no, I don't have a PS5, I just have the controller. Don't have my hands on that. So rather than tap, I could use my keyboard arrow to move over, or I could say I'm going to hit the cross or the X button to navigate through my prototype. And what's nice about XD is once I set a prototype, I can just kind of draw new ones and it's going to remember that same setting, except when I do it this way. So now I can either, I remove my tap, I can simply use the X button to navigate through my prototype just using the game controller, which is really cool. Can we remove participants joining?
Remove participants joining?
Well, I'm just getting notifications it's blocking all the modals. I'll continue. Okay, so that's the basics. We can basically trigger anything that we would with a tap with the game controller keys, and that means we can load up a lot. So keep that in mind. Now, to build the game, I'm gonna go ahead and play what we're gonna build so that you know what we're building. And keep in mind, this is just a simple virtual card game, but a lot of these principles can be translated into a video game. And with XD, you get really nice integrations with Photoshop and Illustrator. So if you have game assets or like vectors that you have in those apps or files, you can easily import them in just by going File, Import, and then selecting any Photoshop or Illustrator file and pull them into XD, which is really nice. And then you can also take images like this and simply go edit in Photoshop to edit them, and then it saves it right back to XD. So there's a nice kind of two-way interconnectivity there that can help you use really nice high-end graphics for a video game. And then you can use these principles that we're going to talk about to build out like a menu, kind of sketch out a storyboard with real visuals and prototyping interactions, just to get kind of closer to a finished product for testing before you actually go to code. And so there's several really popular game companies that are using XD with these game controller integrations to build out their games and test their games or segments of an experience before they go to code and release the game. So as simple as this example might be, there's also quite a bit of logic that's going into this simple game. And so if I just select all of these, you can see things can kind of get a little chaotic. There's a lot going on, but I'm going to walk you through it in step by step. And we might not get through the whole game yet, but at least you have this as a reference if you want to pick it apart at the end. So with that, we're going to hit play. And you can see I have a nice home screen. Now I could either tap on this like this, and it's going to auto-animate, move segments around. And this is basically just giving me a little tutorial screen. So, hey, you're new to the game. Here's how to work it. And so I'm given all the numbers I can click for the different cards. And then, yeah, the instructions. But I hit it there. I can also map this to keyboard keys, or I can map to my game controller. So again, I'm going to hit X, unless I broke it. Let's zoom in and figure this out together. Yes, I did. There we go. Okay. Sometimes you just need to try again. So there I had X on the controller, and I'll do it again, and that's going to move me into the game screen. And now I'm in this game screen, which is kind of randomized. You won't really notice it here because it's doing it in the background using a time trigger, but it's basically flipping through different versions of this card layout, so I don't know which one it's going to be when I actually go to select my card. Now, I can also hit this little menu button. It's hard to see, this one right here with the 3 lines. And it's tied to a little question mark down in the left, right here, which I can also click on and pull up the instructions that we saw at the beginning. So at any point, I can hit that on my controller. There we go. And then I can use simple back out. And this is where knowing kind of conventions of game design can help you. Knowing like B or circles often back. And I'm not a video gamer, so if I get some of these wrong, I just got them wrong. That's fine. So just like that, you can map these things. And at any point in the game, I have it hooked up so that you can hit this button. I think my Bluetooth connection is a little off, and pull up these instructions no matter what screen you're on. And I'll show you how we did that. But now that we're on the screen, we can just simply select a card, and we have new instructions pop up once we've made that first move. And you can see the card actually does a nice flip transition, which is what we're going to show you next. That's kind of the whole crux of this. And then I can select another card, and if I got it wrong, I lose. And then it just resets and goes back to the home screen where I can try again. And then in this case, I win. So this is what we're going to build. But to start, we need to form some kind of foundation building blocks. And so to do that, we can zoom in here at the top of the screen, and we have some brand colors, we have some icons. Everything you need is built already down in here, but I'm just going to walk you through how I built all of these just so that you have an idea and aren't just guessing. So here you can see I have a card. This card is called my card back. It's just the back of the card where we have a cool illustration, a couple of fluffle bunnies, if I'm saying that right, I don't know. And then the game name, Buddy Match. So here we have that. I'm just going to copy and paste this because we want to create the card front, and then we're going to put them together. They're actually two separate components, and you'll see why in a bit. So here I'm just going to ungroup this component, and that's going to break it down. You can see all the elements broke out. Then you can group it back together if you want. In this case, I'm just going to remove that, and we simply want to add these icons because these are going to be all of our different game pieces. And then we're going to use the colors to represent different backgrounds of the cards. So here, I'm just going to start with a simple one and call this pink. And what we can do is come over to our assets panel and simply click on a color with the rectangle selected, and it's going to fill it for us. And the other benefit is that when this color gets edited, that's going to change. You can see it changing up in the color panel and in the card when we apply it that way. So now that I have that, I'm going to start adding in an icon. So in this case, I'm going to drop this one in. We can make this bigger, just like that. And then I'm going to group all of this. Now, to make it a component like the first card, I'm going to simply select Make Component. And you're going to see, we'll call this Demo Card Front. So just like that, I now have the card front. And you might be wondering, okay, do I have to set up a component for every single version of this card? And the answer is no. I can use the same component, and it's advantageous to use the same component. And I'm just going to simply add new variations. So we could say that this is the default state. I might even just gray this out and call this my default so that it's the one I'm not going to use for this. I'm just using it for positioning because it kind of behaves like a parent component to the other states. And then I can simply go in and start adding other states. Maybe this one's going to be my light bulb. And then I'll have my notes, etc. And what I'm going to do is these states behave kind of like keyframes. So when one's selected, I can add that or edit the style of it. So in this case, I'll come in and I'll just take the illustration. And what I can do is I can just replace the component, adjust the size, and then adjust my color. And there we go. Now we have the light bulb, we have default and light bulb. So now you can just keep doing that, building new states. And what I didn't do here that I think is good is if you add all your icons and everything into the default state, when you're going through to build the states, you can simply come into the layers panel and hide and show the layers that you want to see and don't want to see. So if we open up the existing one that I've already done, so in this case, it even has the little Design Buddies logo. You can see here in the layers panel that I have all the other icons there. They're just hidden. if they're not needed. And this just allows you a bit more flexibility and kind of can help you unlock auto animation if you want to do something more fancy with it than what I'm doing. But you can also just add them and remove them, whatever you want. But generally set up your default state with as much as you need, and then you can hide and show. And that just allows you to go back to the default state and adjust the position of something. And then if you move it all, it'll move in the states unless you override it in the states. So that might be confusing, but ask me a question if you want clarifying answers. So we can keep repeating that. For the sake of time, I have it pre-built here with all of the different options. So I'm just going to remove this demo one that I did and flip this back to the default and slide it over here. And you'll notice both of these shapes, they kind of have a background rectangle with a border and a fill. And then they have a drop shadow as well, just to give them some depth above the playing surface. So the next step here for the card is we want to build the card flip. And with XD, that's really easy to do. With Auto-Animate, we can actually kind of move a 2D object in 3D space to create a flip transition, which is super cool. So to do that, I'm basically going to take both of these cards and create a new component. And you'll notice that one is called the completed card here in the assets panel. And if I break this down, you can see the completed card has the back and the front with the back on top. And we've just basically manipulated some positioning. So I'm going to remove that and we'll come back to it. So to start, I want to slide this card over, make sure they're aligned, and you can do that using the alignment tools up top. And I'm going to group that. And I can call this demo completed card. And I'm just going to flip the card back on top just so that it looks the way we need it to. Now, what I'm going to do is with the card back selected, not the group, the card back, over here on the right, there's a little cube, and this cube has a lot of power. We can click it and unlock transformations. I guess I should have said this cube is transformational. But what we can do is it adds basically 2 new rotations on the X and the Y, and then a Z depth. So if you've done any coding, you know, Z depth kind of changes the depth of an object in space. And so to do this, we're going to make sure that that back card stays on top in the face down position and give it a Z depth of 1. So basically that means everything was here. Now that card is just like this. It's up 1 level from the others. And we can go to the card front, and here we're going to go -1. But what we also want to do is, because the card is flipped down, that the back of that card is kind of flipped around. If it was the other way, it would look different. So this is going to be the most confusing part of today. So if you need me to slow down, I'll slow down. And I will even check my completed card just to make sure I'm doing it right. And oh wait, the completed card doesn't matter. Okay, so the card back is going to have no rotation because it's the proper way, and then the card front should have a -180 degrees because it's flipped over. Now let me just double check here on our cards. So this is why I included the final game, because the rotations can be funny. Yeah, so it's -180. And so now that we have that, basically this is set up. So the card back is face up, 1 level up, and then this one's face down. Now, if we were to copy this, let's just put this into an artboard like this. Don't need 3. What we can do is set up the end state here of the flip. And so on the card back, this one is going to go face down in -1. And rather than putting -180, we want 180 here. And this is because the card is flipped down. If you want it to flip back the right way, then you want a positive rotation. It's going back this way. If you want it to just perpetually flip one way, then you keep using 180. But we want it to kind of flip back and forth. So you can see it's flipped backwards there. And if we go to the front, this one's going to come to 0 and 1. And voila, there's the front of the card. And then we can go into prototyping mode and connect these. And why don't we use the cross, see if that will work. And then we're going to use Auto-Animate. And Auto-Animate basically looks at all the layer names, the objects on one canvas to the next, and then figures out what their start and end states are, and then animates them between them. So if we played card states right now, didn't look at the date, you're going to see that when I hit the cross, the card flips just like that. And we can wire this up going the other way as well. And so now if I just keep hitting the cross, I'm going to get that back and forth flip in the card. So that is the core of our design. You can bundle it into a group if you want, but keep that together because we're going to use it in the game, of course. So then we basically have all these simple elements. We have a home screen. I've given you the overlay screen, and all this is, so let's just create our screen. I'm going to start by copying this screen. And so rather than building things out, all this is it's an asset with a text layer. And then I've placed my card groupings in a grid of 6. And you can do that really easily if you just use something like repeat grid. So this is super nice because I can just drag these out, adjust my spacing, and then I have my grid. And then I can ungroup it, and it's just 6 cards. So that's super handy. I'm too distracted by flipping cards. Yeah, it can get carried away. So you can see here what I've done is I've built this screen to match the card layout, and I've just given it a border and basically set these up with a background blur so that you can kind of see the card color in behind, but it's still dark enough that you can see the number and the text. So you can totally play around with that styling. You don't have to follow the styling at all. This is just an option. But then what I've done is down here, I've created a component with a question mark in it. And the reason I created a component is that I can store prototype interactions within a component and have them always go to the same screen. So just because I copied and pasted this screen with that component instance, it's still going somewhere all the way down here to that other overlay I have right there. So I can just take this and fix it and bring it up here. I do have 3 interactions set up for it. And so what I've done is I've basically just overridden that instance of the component, I hope, so that when I'm on this screen and I click that, it's going to pull up this overlay. And you'll notice the rest of the screen is basically untouched. And this is important because this is the same. We're using overlays for this help screen, the incorrect, and the winner modals, just so that we only have to design them once. We don't have to have an artboard for every single flow of the game. They can just always come back here. So what I'm doing is we're using a tap. We can use keys or the PlayStation option button. And then for the action, rather than auto-animate, we're using overlay. And so what that does, you can see here, I'm given this green bounding box, and that basically represents the size of the overlay, which just happens to be the exact same size as the screen. And it removes the fill from the artboard so that it's transparent by default. You can always add shapes on there if you want to create a background. And then you can add different shapes. So we could make it a slide left. That's not going to look good for this example. So we'll just keep it to dissolve. And then this is just a regular artboard that can be linked to from anything as an overlay. And then these two are also overlays. I've just added backgrounds and here added the little Design Buddies confetti, because why not? So you can do that. These are really simple. You lose probably isn't the nicest way to phrase things, but it gets the point across. You got to try again. Maybe we'll add that. Let's do that. We'll go, please try again. And so we can just simply hold Option Alt on the Mac, resize this down and say, please, I'm from Canada. So I'm going to say, please. And maybe we'll add sorry up front. And what's great about these text boxes is we can just easily resize them. We could put a sad face, but I think we've got the point across. Yeah, Fabio. Good to see you, Fabio. Okay, so these are basically all the elements we need, right? We have our cards, we have the play game. To build the help screen, all I really did was made a copy of this screen and then zoomed in here, copied all of these. And what's nice in XD is I can copy something in its position on one artboard and then just select the artboard and paste it, and it's going to paste it in the right position on that other artboard. So I don't have to fiddle with pixels, it's just there. And then I think we changed our text here to, we'll call it, here are the instructions. And we can just copy this button, paste it here, and maybe we can turn on padding so that we can keep the same sizing consistent and just shrink down this font size to fit into the space and call this continue. I think I spelled that right. Spelling live never goes well. And so I just copied that button in design mode, but if I was to copy it in prototype mode, I could also copy the interactions so that I don't have set up. So that's pointless. So let's set up some interactions just to get the game started. Here, I'm going to copy this over. It's going to default to overlay just because that's what I originally set up. So in this case, we'll just use a basic transition, maybe do a slide left. Actually, I'm going to use Auto-Animate here. And because this globe is in the same element on both screens, it should auto-animate. We might need to adjust layer names, but then we can also come in here and like select all of these cards, copy them, paste them, and then do like some alignment things. This is all one group though. Let's hide that. We'll take just the bunnies and kind of pull them off the page so that they're still on that artboard, but they're invisible. And then what this should allow us to do in prototype mode, it'll auto animate. We'll use the X again, and we should get, now that was very fast. So let's slow that down so you can see it. So you can see the cards there kind of moving and animating from one position to the next. So then we could also do it with the instructions or add a delay that those come in after. Lots of different options that you can do for bringing in that screen. So I'll just quickly show you that. I'll pull this over, copy and paste this. And so on this screen, we'll just maybe tone down the opacity of those. And from here, rather than doing a click, I'm just going to set up a time delay. And time delays work just on the artboard. You can't do them yet within the artboard. So make sure you select the artboard. I'm just going to do it instantly because I want it to happen. And then I'm going to auto animate. So now, and we can even kind of deactivate this button until that transition happens if we want. Just pull down the opacity, make it look deactivated. And then here, now if I hit X, oh, I think Zoom's blocking the interactions. There we go. You can see it kind of fades in and then does its switch over and pulls the button up. So now we have our home screen. We basically need to get this screen in order. Now, on this copied screen, I have some other text here that I'm using for my animation. And I'm just going to copy this title slide or title text and move it up. Again, this is all just for the auto animation. So you can see I kind of have 3 stages of text here now. And so that's fine. I'm going to dial that down. And then just make sure that this title, it's already here. If you open that up, select the matching, select a card to get started. So what this is doing is it's basically going to animate from this position and opacity to here once I click on the X. So once again, we'll come down here. This is going to be a keys and gamepad with the cross, and it's going to auto animate. So now our full flow should be, I hit the cross, it fades in. I'm like, okay, I read the instructions, let's go. And then this is the screen that's going to open up our game. Now this is where the logic comes into play. And to do that, I'm going to just come down to the previously built game and kind of walk you through this because it's easier to do it if you can see it. And what we have here is really basically the simplest version of this that I could show you with some randomization. Now what you're looking at here is basically one variation of the game. And then we have a second variation here. But you can take this and kind of keep adding different variations and use a time loop to randomize it even more. You can have like 50 cards if you want. But the basic premise is that there's some randomization at the top, and then depending on when you click, it shoots you into one of the funnels. And I didn't really want to just keep designing, so I'm giving you the point here. So this is that home screen that we saw before. I'm going to go to design mode so we're not overwhelmed here with lines. And so from here, basically, a matching game is 2 moves. You select one card, and then you select another. If they match, great. If they don't, try again. And so just those 2 moves can be quite a bit of different card matchup because we have 6 cards. And so if you really want to simplify this, do this with like 4 cards. Or you can expand it to 12 if you really want to get crazy. But just remember, the more cards you add, the more exponential number of variations you need. So what we have is I started by saying, okay, what happens if person selects card 1? And remember, we kind of handily named them so that we can know all of our slots. And what I did to help myself is I named each kind of card position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This helps me with organization, but it also helps XD with the auto animation. And I kind of got partway through this and realized I was doing it partly a long way. But remember that we set up states at the beginning. So because all the card backs are facing us, it really doesn't matter what state any of these are in until we go to auto-animate it. So in this case, for this move, only this one really needs to worry about the state. But if we go to the card front, we can toggle any one of these, and really it doesn't matter because we're not seeing it. Here, it matters. So this means that we can use that same component, that same group of components across all of the artboards. And one catch you're going to see if you do try and make it all one component versus a group, so you can see all these card positions are a group, is that the 3D transforms don't work quite well within a component. So they have to be individual components that then, or they don't work within component states. So you can move a component, but you can't store it in a state yet. So that's why this is a group. That will make it even more efficient. So here we have card 1. Let's imagine I select that. Here, this is what the screen ends up looking like. I've flipped that card basically using that same technique where the card front is flipped over and the card back is not. I don't know where my transform tools have gone, but oh, I turned them off, that's why. So here you can see that is 1 and 0, and the card back is -1 and 180. So I flipped that one card, great. And then what I did was here, this text, I moved it up here. And then I brought in the bottom text that was below it and turned up the opacity. And that gives me that effect of kind of text scrolling as the animation happens. So once I set up this first card, I then have to go variation by variation and say, okay, so now I have 5 different options that somebody could click, right? They can't click this card again, so I don't need a destination for that. Unless you want them to be able to undo their turn, which you'll notice I have something built here for that, which we can get to in a bit. But now basically I'm going through each variation. So what happens if they click card 2? Okay, this is what it looks like. This is card 3. And I'm basically using that same group. I'm just copying card position 1, 2, etc., and then changing the state of the card front to match the cards. And I have the same layout on all of these screens. And then I'm just flipping over the one that could be clicked. So you can see here, it's going through each and every variation until it gets to the winning one. Okay. And then, yeah, so on the question about randomizing cards, I'm going to get there. You can see I'm basically just repeating this process. This is kind of tedious. I'm repeating that process with, okay, now I'm going to do card 2, card 3, card 4, 5, and 6, and lay all of those out. Now there's some shortcuts you can do because you can copy prototype links. What I've done is once I built out that first flow and had things prototyped, so if we come over here and go to prototype mode, you can see on card 2, I have it mapped to the number 2 on my keyboard. And I've just mapped it because there's no numbers on here to the D-pad right. So each number, like we saw in the instructions, has a button on the game controller. So I have 3 different ways to interact with it. And I don't want to set those up every single time. So what I can do is, let's say I didn't have this one set up. You can see it's the same interactions. Oops, don't want to delete them all. All right. I'm going to delete the card, and then I can copy this, and I know it's card position 2. And I'm going to simply, oh, I went too far. We'll leave the card in there. I'm just going to go and use paste interactions. Once I do that, it's going to go to that artboard because that was the destination. But just like you saw before, I can easily drag these down and reset it. So I'm only just moving the end destination. I don't have to reconfigure all the inputs every time. So that's a bit of a time saver, especially when you're doing all of these. But then once it's laid out, I'm basically going through and applying the transitions to each one of these. Start simple, do one at a time if you want. But here you can see I'm mapping to all of the individual gamepad triggers, so that when I hit one, it then triggers that auto-animate and I'm flipping the individual cards, right? Okay, so I'm going to pause for questions there. Nothing jumping out there. Anybody stuck on what I'm saying right now? There is not an option right now to write any actual logical conditions. Definitely something we're looking at in different capacities in terms of how do you kind of manipulate a prototype, but I'm not sure where we are in that. I would love to see it too. Creative and logic magic, yeah. Yeah, component states would be even faster. You could cut down on a lot of this. Okay, cool. So we've got the game system in place. Each of these goes to their end destination. So If you wanted to, you could use the artboard names. I was running at a time. You could name these all like card 1, card 2, whatever you want to use. But yeah, it's basically from here a collection of connecting everything together. And then obviously we have that lose-win flow. And so you'll see I don't have lose-win flows for each individual option. It's all the overlays. And so we don't need one on this home screen because you haven't finished the game. So you don't win or lose. You have to keep playing. But on our first card, you can see that on the artboard itself, I have a time delay of 1 second. And then rather than an auto-animate, I'm going to an overlay to my incorrect modal. So if we follow that line along, you can see it's coming from here and zooming all the way over here across our game board. That was to the help overlay. We'll click on this one, which is to the incorrect modal. And it's basically just dissolving. We can still adjust all of our timings and everything. I left them all as default just to keep it easy. But yeah, so once I play that second card, I have 1 second, and then this incorrect modal will come up. But then from this, to reset the game, I have a tap. Nope, the tap just closes the modal. So if you tap it, technically it will go back. But then from here, there should be a time delay. That may have disappeared. Oh no, it's right here. So here, from this modal, we have a time delay of 2 seconds that transitions back to the home screen. And you want to probably avoid auto-animate here because it is an overlay. It's not just an object that will kind of fly off the screen, but you can use any of these pushes up, down, left, right. So if we switch that to a push down and just play this first one again, that's not the first one, this one. It's going to come up and then it's actually going to push down into the home screen. So you can get different effects for those transitions depending on the actions that you take. Okay. Time triggers within a component, not right now, unfortunately. Prototyping probably is one of my favorite. I'm just looking at Slido. So if you are asking questions, I do have Slido up, so ask them there. But yes, prototyping is my favorite part of XD, I think. But there's just so many things to love. So that is how we set up this full kind of overflow for game one. Now, if we left it like this, right? Every time I come back to this screen, I know where the cards are, which defeats the whole point. Like I play it once and then I know it's 1 and 6 or 2 and 4. I already know that because I've played the game a bunch of times. But now you'll see that I have this time trigger coming off of that artboard and headed all the way to another one. And in this one, you'll notice we have some different looking cards. These aren't the notes and whatnot. These are stars and rockets. So this is our second variation of the game, option 1, 2, because I didn't rename my artboards. And so basically what's happening to randomize, it's not really randomized, but to randomize this game is we have a time trigger going here and a time trigger coming back, so that when you land on this screen, we're basically going into an infinite loop between the two workflows. And this is where if you keep adding workflows and looping between them, you will have a really hard time guessing which flow you're part of. And so all I did was I set up a 0.8 second time delay with a 0.6 second dissolve. And the key here is to use dissolve, because if you're using Auto-Animate and any of your cards are named differently, you might get like a cool like flip or fly around. And that's going to be a pretty easy tell that something's changing. So you want to make sure all your pixels are like perfectly aligned and just dissolve between them. You don't even really need easing. And this can happen really at whatever speed. It's probably better to keep it shorter actually. because it might hinder your ability to click a button if it's still transitioning. So if you set that to like 5 seconds, you might block people from actually playing the game. So keep it short. You can play with the time triggers. So like maybe this one is going to be a time delay of 2 seconds. So somebody might say, oh, I know, but you can vary the times and really add more confusion. Does it cause lag as you add more outcomes? No. It's just really operating one transition at a time, right? So XD doesn't know about the rest of the game. It's basically just transitioning between whatever time trigger slides you have. So it doesn't really care about the rest. And then once you get in here, all of these are one move at a time. So it wouldn't really slow anything down or cause a delay. Okay, so that is basically the mechanics. And I would have loved to build this out all live, but you would probably hate me because it would be a lot of just linking all these artboards together, which is pretty tedious. I think it took me an hour just to do that. But what we have now is I have this flow, right? And in prototype mode, I've simply enabled this little home screen button. And because all these are linked in magical fashion, I have all of these in a flow that I've called the buddy match game. And so now when I go to share mode, it's going to highlight all of this. And I can just share this out. If I want to collect feedback, I can use design review. I'm just going to use user testing mode. And this is going to open it full screen with no hotspots and anyone with the link. So when I create this, it's just going to open in the browser. And I can send this to my friends, my family, and say, hey, or post it on social with hashtag Adobe XD, which I think Grace will talk about in a little bit. And there's a lot going on here, so it's going to take a second to generate the link. But basically, now I can, in the web browser, I have all the same controls other than gamepad and keyboard. But if I hook up the taps, I can play it in the same way. So that's why I have tap, keyboard, and gamepad. But yeah, then you can send it out to your friends. They can play it. You can add your own cool designs for the cards and get creative with how you use overlays, how you use animations. And it doesn't just have to be card games like this, right? You could do kind of like little mini clip games or addictinggames.com. That was the height of my gaming career. If I open this now, anyone, you don't need an Adobe ID here, but just like that, we have the game and it's going to behave just like you wanted it to. And look, now it's full screen on my computer and I can play. Probably not while I'm supposed to be working, but it's there. It's kind of like the new solitaire, right? Or maybe I'm too old and that reference goes over everybody's heads. But there you go. So now you have a share link that you can send out and play it with your friends. So the game's there. Feel free to pick it apart, improve it. If you come up with a cool idea to make it more efficient, post it on Twitter or LinkedIn and be like, hey, Matt, I did it better than you. And that's great because then we all learn. I have solitaire on my iPhone. That's awesome. All right. Do you want to take over now, Grace? And then we'll get into the questions. So while Grace is talking, definitely listen, but also add your questions on Slido. And then I'll answer those in a bit.
Yeah, we're on to our next part where we're gonna do 3 giveaways for the remainder of this event. The first one would be happening very soon. The last 2 will be happening towards the end, so after the Q&A session at 6:30 the latest. While we're here, definitely submit your questions on Slido for Matt to answer and upvote your buddies' questions, the ones you really want to be asked first. And with that said, we'll be doing a group photo first and then our giveaway. And for our giveaway, I'm not going to announce it yet, but we're going to do it after a group photo. So I'm going to give a few moments for people to turn on their cameras, grab your pets, grab your stuffed animals, grab your buddies, grab anything you want. And this is going to be a group photo. And we're also going to do a wave for our Instagram story. And then we'll do our first giveaway. where you'll be like spamming something in the chat. So I won't tell you what that thing is, but we'll be picking somebody random from the chat to win the giveaway, and we'll be emailing you on the email to make sure your Zoom name matches your Luma name, the name that you submitted with your email, so we can find you, and we'll pick one from there randomly. And afterwards, I'll announce how to get the second giveaway. So still see people turn on the camera, so I'm give it like 10 seconds or 5 seconds. I'm gonna count down for y'all to smile. I have like all of you open on the screen. Oh, we have 2 screens actually, or multiple screens. But yeah, so I'll count down for 10 seconds. Feel free to grab your bunnies. I love your baby Yoda, octopus. Nice, root beer, nice. Grab your objects. This will be posted on our socials. So if you guys want like your root beer or your bunnies or your buddies to be in a photo, definitely bring them with you. All right, then count down. 5. Definitely hold smile because there's multiple pages. 4, 3, and we're gonna do a wave after this, and then the giveaway. So act like you're like really excited for the giveaway. 2, 1, say cheese. Say smiling. All right, we're gonna do a wave for Instagram story and the giveaway. So I'm gonna open up Instagram. My phone's a little bit laggy, but here we are. All right, ready, set, wave. Hello, everybody. Today we are getting interactive, creating games in Adobe XD with Matt Rae. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We're gonna do a giveaway soon, so stay tuned. Cool. With that, as I publish our Instagram story, we're gonna answer this question. Each right answer gets a point. So what is Fluffle's favorite food? Fluffle is the name of our mascot, aka the name of this bunny right here in the logo. So what is Fluffle's favorite food? Let us know in the chat. Carrots? No, it's something you least expect. It starts with a B. It starts with a B. Yeah, some of you got it right. Starts with a B. And it's what we rebranded to during April Fool's Day. So if you just scroll up on our announcements, you'll find the answer there. Correct. Beans. All right, so I'm gonna save the chat so we can pick some of y'all to see the Creative Cloud. But Fluffle's favorite food is beans. I don't even know how it started, but one day we just started saying beans. So we have a bean react in our server, on Discord server. So make sure to use that if you want to react beans. Comment your favorite type of beans. Do you like kidney beans, garbanzo beans, soybeans? What are your beans? Let us know. We want to know. Pinto beans, nice. So black beans, soybeans, black eyed peas, nice. Nice. We love our beans here. Like, yeah, beans are good for your health. I guess they're legumes, not vegetables. But yeah, we're gonna do a Q&A session now. So Jack, I'll let you take it away. And then 2 more giveaways after this, and make sure to stay towards the end.
Yeah, great. Look at all these beans flooding the chat right now. That's that's the most beans I've ever read in my entire life. Okay. That was really awesome, Matt. Thanks for taking us through. I know you said you have Slido open as well. I thought we could start with maybe some of these that are most upvoted, and then maybe you can pick and choose some that are really standing out to you. So we can start with, from Anonymous, what are some of the plugins that you use and would recommend to people to improve their workflow?
All right, I'm gonna share my screen because I have a feeling we're gonna need it. So plugins are, we'll keep that open. Plugins really depend on what kind of workflow you're trying to accomplish. So there's some plugins that are really just dependent on the workflow you're doing. So things like, if I open this up, we can go in and discover some of these. So things like the Google Sheets plugin or Data Populator, those are really handy if you're working with copy editors or trying to pull in real data into your app or game or whatever you're designing. So that's really helpful if you have that particular workflow. If you already have the copy and you're just kind of putting it in there, it might not be beneficial to you. So content sync, Google Sheets, data populator, those are all good. If you're doing anything with voice, Google Assistant and Alexa have plugins so that you can actually preview a smart assistant experience on their devices, which is really cool and super handy. But again, not for everyone. Some of the ones I have over here on the left, I have a light install right now, but Stark is probably a staple. We probably all know about Stark as well for checking contrast and accessibility. It's probably one of the ones that would fit into most workflows. I like to use Rename It as well. So I actually used it in this project. I had gone a certain distance, didn't name all my card groups properly. So I was able to just go through, select like all of these, and then rename them card group 1 or however I wanted to name it. And you just rename selected layers, put in the new name, and you can use variables. So that one's super handy if you're like me and kind of mess up your naming and then realize halfway through. UI Faces is great for just populating kind of, I won't call them dummy faces because that feels wrong, but just like dummy data. You can just fill in spaces like this. You can either select photos like this and apply them into shapes so that if you're looking for avatars or something, you can find them. And then probably the ones I use the most, this is from the Adobe International Design team, Whiteboard, Quick Mockup, and Presentation. They're kind of a little suite of plugins, and Whiteboard just gives you a lot of tools for brainstorming. If you plug it in with the live co-editing, your team can brainstorm, you can draw in here. You can just use the elements. So if you want to add in a post-it note, you can do that. And then Quick Mockup gives you some nice templates for mocking up or wireframing that you can use. And Presentation is really sweet. It basically pulls in makes this better than PowerPoint. And you can just start a presentation, pick all these themes, and easily switch between the themes too. So that kind of covers your whole workflow of like ideation, mocking up, presenting a concept, all in those 3 plugins.
Awesome. Awesome. I think we could touch maybe on Dinesh's question, which was on how to randomize the cards every time. And you kind of briefly went over that time interaction between those two. So maybe if we could touch on that a bit more.
Yeah, so that's the magic, the loop here. If I wanted to create another flow, right? I could basically, I won't copy the whole thing, but if I copied this whole group, set it up, I could just build a new time transition. I would basically take this one and move it over here and then build a time transition back to that first one. So then I'm just creating a grand loop and going in between them. You can get even fancier and have multiple versions of these for each flow. So if you had like 3 of these, then you could do some like weird interlinking webbing, but that's very intense. So this is a nice simple one, and you'll trip most people up unless they play it a lot. But if they're playing your matching card game on XD enough to figure out the timing, there might be other problems.
That's super cool. Yeah. So basically just the more starting points you have here to loop together with your time interactions, the more possibilities you can have.
Exactly.
Very cool. Were there any of these questions that were really standing out to you that you'd like to take one on?
Yeah. I think we have time. I could probably get through. Oh, maybe not most of them. All right. I'll pick through. So in terms of the principles and how you can apply these to bigger projects, obviously this is a simple project. You could go intense and design like a full like chapter of a game in basic like 2D imagery. A lot of the times you're going to want to use this for testing and designing, experimenting with interactions themselves. So if it's like a game menu sequence, you can use the controllers, kind of move your hover states or active states around and just test that. So you'll probably be testing segments of a game using these principles. Same, the game controller, you might not use transforms day to day, but Auto-Animate, the prototyping, all of that gets used all the time. And there was just recently an article that came out, King.com, who makes Candy Crush, they're using Photoshop and XD together. So Photoshop for all the graphics, and then they'll test out their interactions and kind of build segments of the game in XD. So that's just one example. But as soon as you go past game design, there's so many more as well. Let me see. So yeah, lots of good questions here. In terms of why we want to use XD as our UX tool of choice, definitely part of that is preference, workflow. I personally switched to XD long before I worked for XD, mostly for the prototyping. So I was in Sketch before. I was kind of hitting roadblocks trying to explain things to development teams or sales or product management teams. And this just gave me a really easy platform to, like, I could design in it, but then I could also communicate my concepts easily. And one thing I really like in XD, it connects into Creative Cloud. So if you're working with other teams that are using those apps, it pulls in really seamlessly. But then when I'm previewing, and I use this a lot, is I can actually record my prototype, enable the microphone, and voice over things. So especially when we're like asynchronous, like we are now, in many places, we can record something. If we're working with a team that's working through the night while we're sleeping, we can send it over and it's got all the color and information that you need. So there's a lot of good things for communicating and testing these interactions before you code them. Something that like basic dissolves and page transitions just can't communicate. So that's why I use it. You might have your own reasons why. Okay. I'm just gonna kind of go one by one here. I don't have much advice for UX internships. I've never done one, so I don't really know where to look, but I think there's a lot out there. The simple, maybe cop-out answer is networking, like just keep talking to people. There's a lot of design communities around. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like design buddies. So I'm sure Grace has some good connections there. So grid systems, yes, good question. I'll show this one quickly. So XD has a bunch of like relative smart guides. You can easily, I probably have them turned off. There they are. If you hover on the top or the left of an artboard, you can pull guides in and snap them wherever you need them. And they're gonna snap to elements that already exist, and elements that don't already exist, once you add them, will snap to the guides as well. So that's one way, just to have really nice dynamic rulers, and you can turn them on and off. But then you can also turn on layouts. So if you're doing responsive web design, the column grid is really handy, and you can fully customize it. If you want it 6, if you want it pink, you can do all of that. And then you can also switch it to a square grid. And this is really handy because you can snap things to each of the grid elements, and you can change this to match whatever system you're working with. So if you're on a 16 pixel grid, you can match it. And then you can always flip back to a default. So that's really quickly the nice grid layout controls. Yes, prototyping is my favorite part of XD. Oh, creating a bend in the card with 3D transforms. No, because basically what you're doing is you're taking a flat object and just moving it either in X, Y, or Z. That was probably not a helpful demonstration, but it's not really morphing the object. You'd have to get into like a real 3D animation tool to do that. So this again is just trying to be a way to help you quickly express an idea without, like, so you don't have to jump into a Adobe Dimension or Blender, you can just kind of like, here, I just want this to nudge within the same tool. How does it know when a match was made to trigger the win page? So all of that is, I'm basically spelling out the logic myself. So from all of these pages here, right, there's no match. This one matches. So for all 4 of these, I have this linking to the incorrect page. And then from this one, I'm just straight up wiring it to the correct page. So XD doesn't know that. Well, it does, but it knows it because I told it. That's the simple answer. And multiplayer games. So multiplayer games, you're going to probably just be designing and testing the experiences. You're probably not going to have people playing multiple or playing in XD. It just doesn't work like that. You could send somebody a link and set up like we're using with the time transitions. You could use text to say, okay, player 1's turn, player 2's turn. And then like change the view using time triggers or tap triggers or something, but it's not going to be able to like enforce that it's that player's turn. It'll just be a visual cue. I think we already answered the time triggers one, not yet. My prototype artboards and component library seem like 2 giant folders. Yeah, I guess. They're just kind of placed on the screen. There's no like folders or anything in the canvas, so no secret plugins. You could draw shapes on top and just say like, put text in it, lock that layer to the canvas, and I've done that in the past as well. So it could look something like this, but this is probably still the best organization for these artboards because you're going top to bottom, left to right. That's how XD reads it. I think we've already seen that one. What do I think is currently missing from XD to make better prototypes? Well, I think we've covered some of it, and I don't know how much I can say because I know what's coming and I can't really spill the beans too much. Sorry, I had to do it. But things like just more triggers, more actions within the component states. That was a question before. That's stuff that the team knows about it. I'll say that. I don't want to get in trouble here. But yeah, just there's more things the team is looking at and planning on to help make things more realistic. So team knows about most of these things, but we have a user voice. If you Google Adobe XD user voice, definitely jump in there and vote up things. Yeah, that's about all I can say on that right now. If I wanted to change the size of all cards within the component equally, not totally sure what you're asking there because there's only one card in each component. So yeah, feel free to ask a clarifying question on that. And have I ever used Unity with XD for motion designs? I have not. I've never used Unity. But yeah, I can't really answer that question. And how do I align illustrations to the center of objects? If I hover on the bunny on the card, you can see the outlines are not central. Yeah, so that's with this one. I think that was just the way the asset is prepped. I kind of just visually aligned it. Again, you could drag in guides if you wanted to, and kind of snap it to the middle and then align it. But that's just eyeballing it. Can you design glass morphism animations in XD? I don't even know what a glass morphism animation is. I know what glass style is. Check out Howard Pinsky's videos. He's been doing a little bit more with glass effects. That doesn't always come into the practical uses in my day-to-day workflow. So I haven't played with it too much, but I do believe it's possible. And I think Howard's been doing that. I think I got through them all.
Yeah,
yeah,
that was
back to the
that.
chat. I don't think glass morphism is the most accessible. Same with like the new morphism. They look cool, but in terms of practicality, they're not always the best.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
trend. Looks
Yeah,
nice, but doesn't mean
sure
like
does.
it communicates the idea well to
Yeah.
a lot of people.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, that was
Albert.
crazy. You got through all those questions so efficiently.
Yeah, that was great. Awesome.
Grace, if
Voice
you
is
want to
almost
take
gone.
over.
Yeah, so we're gonna do our last two giveaways. So make sure to listen closely for the details. And I'm gonna drop some links in the chat. So make sure you tag all these people appropriately. So for our last two giveaways, this is like giveaways for second and third. We're gonna have 6 more, which I'll be explaining after this giveaway. But for this giveaway, it's gonna be on social media, gonna be on Instagram and Twitter. If you guys don't have Instagram or Twitter, LinkedIn's fine. Just make sure you tag us so we can see. But share screenshots from this event. You can also go back to YouTube recording and share your favorite takeaways, what you learned. If there's new cool tool or new cool like Adobe XD trick you learned, share it on socials, share it on Instagram. It could be on your Instagram story as well. And make sure to tag on Instagram, tag Design Buddies and Matt. There's no Adobe XD Instagram yet, but on Twitter, tag Design Buddies Adobe XD and Matt. So I'll be dropping the links in the chat and the hashtags to use, also hashtag XD. So and we'll be choosing 2 random people from that and DMing you on Instagram and Twitter. If you really don't have those 2, tag us on LinkedIn and make sure to actually tag Design Buddies and Matt. Or you can tag me as well, and I'll be checking to be entered if you don't have Twitter or Instagram. And yeah, so that's giveaway number 2 and 3. Number 1 was the beans one. Number 2 and 3 was that one. Again, tag us on socials. You had to be following us too, so we'll be checking obviously. And don't unfollow us afterwards, otherwise it'll be kind of sad. And that will win you a 1-year Creative Cloud giveaway. And for the last 6 of them, we're gonna be after you have 72 hours from now to do this. If you guys, if you all, sorry, I'm trying to be inclusive here, I just speech and text and stuff. So if you all create your own game in Adobe XD following the tutorial Matt walked through, share the prototype link on Discord in the Designing Games event submission. So I'll just be linking exactly to that channel. So I'll link you to the message. It takes you directly to the channel. If you guys can't see that channel, make sure you join Discord Design Buddies and make sure you go to Rules Verify here and get verified so you can see all the channels. And post in the welcome chat if you guys have any trouble doing that. And after that, so let's give away number 4 through 6 for 1 year's of Creative Cloud. For 7 to 9, we're having you do the same thing on social media where you can like post your giveaways, post your creations on social media with the hashtags, with the details all in that channel. And you can even enter twice. If you enter both on Discord and on social media, you get a better chance of getting randomly selected for 1 year CC subscription. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you everyone for coming. And yes, Fabio, as Fabio said, if you unfollow, a bunny will cry. You don't want to make Fofo cry, right? So don't do that. With that, thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, we will have more events coming up very soon. And check out all of our other events for next event happening next week about UX design and accessibility and design as well. So there are 2 events coming up next week. Details going to be announcements dropping tomorrow morning, Pacific time. And we're actually doing a few project jams and 3 design jams over the summer coming up soon. The one's launching mid-July. So it's a collaboration with Adobe XD and Product Buds. So make sure to watch out for that as well. And we'll be having more prizes there. So join us there. And we're doing another design jam with ADP list as well later this year. So definitely clear your schedule and join us for those jams. That jam with Product Buds is starting July 12th, so mid-July. So definitely and it's going to be like a six week long project jam. So definitely join us there as well for future events with the WXD and Product Buds. And yes, follow us on YouTube. We have all of our event recordings. I bet we have like more than like 45 hours of events on there. So definitely check that out. All events are usually recorded on there. And with that, as always, stay positive, test negative, post about us on socials. You'll make Fluffle very happy, and you guys want to make Fluffle happy. And have a nice day. With that, all the hosts, I'll do quick retrospectives for 5 minutes. But thank you everybody for coming, and thank you Fluffle fam. And you can get this hat in a Design Buddy store, by the way. And it's really hot. I'm still wearing it to rep Fluffle. Let me stop live streaming. So bye-bye, YouTube.